If you are conducting a semi-structured interview, it's very important to remain consistent in the order you ask questions, how you introduce the study, and even how you close the interview. In order to provide this consistency for all interviewers and interviewees, you can create what's called an interview guide. This should include, number one, an introduction, where the interviewer introduces themselves and welcomes the interviewee. Number two, write out the purpose for the interview to establish what it's about and why the research is important. Number three, always include the timeline. Let them know if they should expect it to take 5 minutes or 30 minutes. Number four, you have to specifically state and ask permission to record and get permission in order to start the recording. Next one, you need to assure the interviewee that their responses will remain anonymous. They will be recorded as like interviewee number two, but their name and identity will not be shared at any time. Next, you should always have unbiased, clearly written questions. By making a guide where you have these questions written out, you can ensure you ask them in the same way to all interviewees. You should also establish the order for the questions. This way you can funnel them to start with the broad or easier warm-up questions and get more specific and harder. This means more sensitive questions at the end of the interview. Keep this order consistent for all interviews. And finally, close the interview. You need to thank the interviewee for their time and provide any additional information they need, like how to collect their incentive. This should be consistent for all participants. Here is an example interview guide for my smoke-free campus policy interview. First, I start by introducing myself and thanking the interviewee for taking part. I explain the purpose of the interview and why they were chosen. I give the timeline for the interview as well as the number of questions that will be asked. I give them instructions to ask for clarification and that their responses will remain anonymous, and also ask for permission to record. I then have the 5 questions that I will ask in an order that's chosen to start with the easier ones and move towards the ones that are harder to answer and more sensitive as well. After each question, I include in brackets probes that the interviewer can use. This is so the probing questions remain consistent in various interviews. After you have finished asking those questions that cover the topics in the interview, move on to the closing, where you thank the interviewer for their time, assure them that their responses will be kept anonymous, and if you did need to provide additional information on incentive, you could also provide it here. This is the structure that you would want to have if you were conducting a real interview to help make sure you keep the interviews consistent and also help to keep you on track throughout the process of doing the interview.